was emphatic about colonization in the United States and rejected back to Africa. The new sect chose to philosophically repatriate in ritual and memory. Black migration and colonization that extended into the U.S.-Mexico borderland regions brought with it Afrotropic notions of sovereignty. Many mythologized narratives project the story of Moses in the book of Exodus. This study assumes black folk went further into their biblical teachings and drew significance from the book of Joshua as well. Guided in religious fervor, black men enlisted as soldiers in an occupation force on indigenous desert lands. Entrance into frontier spaces required an internal narrative of what to do after Moses died. Significant in the development of Afro-frontiers, chaplains, black ministers who were also military personnel, accompanied black military personnel. Part of U.S. expansionism in the 1870s, black men served in all black military units and were empowered by the experience. Participation in confiscation and occupation of indigenous lands redirected black migration and colonization westward. The common frameworks shaping the historiography of black people in frontier spaces are rooted in a desire to document the existence of black people who migrated to frontier spaces, leaving much to be desired, however, in the form of analysis. The idea that black migration out of the South was an exodus was first publicly mentioned in the proceedings of the Select Committee of the United States Senate to investigate the causes of the removal of the Negroes from the southern states to the northern states in 1880. Later, black scholars, such as Carter G. Woodson, adapted the use of exodus as a characterization of black migration that took place in the 50-year period surrounding 1900. His book, A Century of Negro Migration, was one of the earliest scholarly works to specifically cover the topic of mass black migration. In addition, he popularized the notion of exodus as early as 1918. Woodson began his book with a chapter on black people titled, quote, Finding a Place of Refuge, end quote. And he ended it with a chapter on, quote, the Exodus during the World War, referring to World War I. Black military in Mexico's northern frontier. Black military personnel, ministers, and Freemasons, through military service, transported themselves into the U.S. westward expansion during America's post-bellum period. On July 28, 1866, black military personnel who served in the Union Army successfully lobbied the U.S. Congress to authorize organization of black regiments. In 1869, Buffalo Soldier regiments of the 24th and 25th Infantry began the wave of mostly black men in military service after the demise of major slave institutions. White officers lorded over the black enlistees until the late 1870s when Henry O. Flipper commissioned as an officer from West Point and ushered in a new age of black officers in the U.S. military. Texas was a kinetic frontier space where black colonization was a part of the condition of blackness. Freedom colonies in the state numbered in the hundreds by 1900. In part due to white violence, often military personnel led a colonization effort as if establishing a fort or fiefdom. Black military units were accompanied by military chaplains, many of whom were Freemasons. Black Freemasonry was a fundamental element to colonization efforts as the institution helped solidify the community's moral compass outside of church. Significant to the frontier thesis, in 1784, in Boston, Massachusetts, Prince Hall Freemasonry was established on the black side of town, parallel to white Freemasons, with full rights and authority to do so. Black frontier success bred envy in white Freemasons, who also were white supremacists and part of the second wave of the Ku Klux Klan at the turn of the 20th century. The two fraternal orders maintained similar names as well as rituals and regalia independent of one another. When the newly established higher order was created in the late 1800s, white men attempted to restrict black 32nd degree Freemasons from the Scottish Rite Consistory or Knights Templar. White Freemasons argued they held legal and exclusive rights. During America's racial nadir, white people did not stop at lynching, rape, and torture. They also attacked black institutions with a similar violence. Such was the case when black Freemasons adopted a higher order of 33rd degree Freemasonry, the ancient Egyptian Arabic order of nobles of the mystic shrine, Shriners. White Freemasons organized their charitable organization during the early 1870s in New York, led by their Imperial Council. Black Freemasons in Chicago established a similar order that spread across the United States and maintained an Imperial Council with added authority from an ancient order of Mohammedans, Moors, black Muslims, dating back to the 7th century. At the turn of the 20th century, white Freemasons attempted to strip black Freemasons from using the names and regalia they both shared. White Freemasons filed a lawsuit that went to the U.S. Supreme Court and was decided in 1929. Both groups had local Grand and Supreme Lodges, including Knights Templar and Scottish Rite Consistories. In 1893, Black Freemasons incorporated their organization in Illinois successfully. In 1895,